Hello and welcome back to Beaver Hunter's Game Models. In this video I want to show you how I painted and weathered the resin tracks by Panzerart for my Tamiya Panther tank. I hope you liked the result and please enjoy the video. These are the tracks I chose, the early type tracks for the Panther D. Obviously I started with building them, which was not a hard job. They assemble pretty easy and fast by pushing the pins on both sides into the tracks links. They are workable and look pretty good. Only negative point for me is that some pins are sitting pretty loose, what will be fixed later. And this is how a track section looks and behaves like when assembled. Pretty neat. I went the lazy way and used resin primer so I could jump right to applying the base paints by airbrush. And I started with Tamiya's German grey as the overall base coat for the whole tracks. And here you can see my little helper. I used it to make the tracks bend and expose the inner areas of the track links. This is a better way than spraying the tracks lying flat on the table, and when you bend them around the idler or running wheels later, bare unpainted plastic will be visible. Like this I had full coverage of the base paint. I then applied a rusty brown tone over the German grey, but only in a random way, not covering the grey completely. Maybe it can almost be seen as a glaze applied by airbrush and sprayed thin and without full coverage. This makes the tracks a bit more random and interesting, and I have a good foundation for later effects. And I here again used my helper to make sure I also hit the areas in between the links. And this is the status after the airbrush stage. A nice slightly rusted metal looking track that is ready for further painting. I grabbed me AK's natural steel metallic paint and started to paint the contact points of the track. These are the areas which have contact to the ground when driving and therefore would be polished and shiny. To paint the guiding teeth on the tracks inside, I masked off the inner sides of the tracks so I could paint the teeth without being worried about hitting other places with the metallic paints. And with that being done, I could easily paint the guiding teeth with the metal paint without worrying about hitting the tracks on places I don't want them to be painted. Metallic paints are hard to remove because of the shiny metal pigments. Also, I therefore can highly recommend using different brushes and cleaning water for metallic paints. You just don't want these metal pigments in your good brushes the next time you maybe paint a figure. And when I was done with painting, I could remove the masking tape. But here came the point when I lost my patience with the loose pins falling out again and again when moving the tracks. So I used a small drop of super glue and applied it to the head of the loose pins, hopefully putting them in place for the last and final time. And now the last masking tape was removed. To make a wash like pre-dusting, I used acrylic paint, thinned it with flow improver to break the tension and a lot of water. This was supposed to be a very thin wash as I just wanted to give the tracks a dusty summer-like look. And I used acrylic paint here because I wasn't sure how the resin tracks would react to a bigger amount of odorless thinner if this would be enamel paint. Like this, I was on the safe side. But then I had to use the thicker enamel earth products for adding matte effects by speckling. But here the amount of used thinner is almost not worth counting. By speckling the enamels onto the tracks, I could achieve a random looking result. And as these tracks will be used on a tank placed in a summer scene, I used 2 lighter colors and 1 darker one, as there shouldn't be so much fresh and dark matte. And of course these colors will be used also on the tank and the diorama later. The paint was applied undiluted because I was looking for thicker matte-like splashes here. The medium Kursk Summer Earth tone was a bit thinner than the splashes products, and with that I achieved even more variation. Specks that came out too big could be fixed or removed with a thinner moistened brush. A darkest tone loose ground was applied undiluted again and in a small amount just to add some additional visual details. And as I said before, this tank will be placed in a summer scene and there is no need for a lot dark matte. When the enamel products had a few minutes to dry, I grabbed me some Q-tips moistened with thinner and cleaned the contact points of the tracks, which should be clean because of the tank rolling over them. I made sure that the Q-tips were not completely wet because I wanted to avoid spilling too much thinner over the resin tracks. But until now I could not see an effect the thinner had on the material. Then the process of speckling was repeated in the same way on the inside of the tracks using the same paints in the same order. And I again grabbed me some moistened Q-tips and cleaned the guiding teeth and the contact areas where the wheels would run in the tracks, and therefore the tracks would be cleaner. To show the abrasion that the rubber coated rollers would leave on the tracks, I used a watercolour pencil in a matching color to the rubber on the rollers. I here used a cheaper version from the discounter instead of the more fancy but more expensive ones from the big hobby brands. I here paid around €5 for 24 colored pencils. And with that pencil I treated the areas where the rollers would run in the tracks and therefore leave some rubber on them. And here you can see a comparison between the untreated track on the left and on the right the treated one. I think it's a nice additional detail to make the tracks look more interesting. Because the weathering toned down the shine of the polished metal a bit too much, I decided to make another run with diluted natural steel paint and rework these areas. Because the paint was diluted, it wasn't very covering and it matched good to the overall look of the tracks. The tracks were then done and good for a test mounting to see if they still fit and how they look at the model. Mounting tracks is always very nerve-wracking for me, as it's always fiddly and a lot things can go wrong or small parts fall off. Luckily it went pretty smooth here. And if you now maybe became curious about my Panther tank project, feel free to check out the previous videos. And with these pictures of the mounted tracks, I want to say thank you for watching my video. I hope it was interesting to watch and I could entertain you for a few minutes. The model is already looking pretty nice and almost finished with the mounted tracks. But earth and mud are still missing, which will be part of the next video. So maybe I caught your attention to my Panther Tank series and you might want to give it a look at my channel. So long, thanks again for watching, stay safe and hopefully until the next time.